What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react to this news report, which says new research finds that the number of Canadians cutting travel here to the United States is even higher than initially predicted. You have to be kidding me with that. I mean, and I've actually taken some time to look at some of the recent data showing how bad things have gotten for the United States due to these Canadian boycotts. And it's bad. But now, no, you're telling me, hold on, it's not bad. It's worse? I mean, why don't you just come put a arrow bar in my dog's food bowl while you're at it? Okay, maybe that's a little extreme, but this is pretty disappointing. For any American to hear this is disappointing. So today, I really want to check out this update here and try to understand how things are really going for the US and Canada. So let's take a look.
Well, Canadians may be avoiding travel to the United States more than we first thought, according to some new interesting research. The measurements that are commonly used to show the decline do come from border crossings, where Statistics Canada shows a dip of about 25%. But some new research out of the University of Toronto looked at Canadian cell phone activity in major U.S. cities. That told a different story, a median decline of 42%. The researchers are saying,
What? 42? I mean, I've seen a couple different numbers for this stuff. Like when we're talking about the percent decrease of Canadians traveling here to the US, I've seen 25%, which is unprecedented. That alone is a massive number. I've seen 35% by some projections, and this is saying 42. We're actually getting close to a 50% decrease in the number of Canadian travelers to the United States. That is unbelievable. And honestly, you almost have to laugh about it because it's like, I guess the lesson here is you should never piss off Canada, ever. Because, man, here in the United States, we actually take pride in expressing your thoughts and opinions and protesting, and you could call this one of the biggest protests, boycotts against an entity, the United States, ever, right? This is crazy. I mean, I'm impressed, and it's not good for me, or for, it's not good for the US, so it's not good for me. But I can't help but in a weird way kind of admire it. But anyway, so they're saying most of the data, 25% decrease, 30% decrease, that's from measuring border crossings, when Canadians drive into the US, or surely they were counting when you guys fly here, drive here, bike here, I don't know, boat, whatever. But then this firm did research on Canadian phone usage in the US, which, if that's an interesting way of measuring things, is that more accurate? It certainly creates a different data point and a different number, 42%. That's the biggest I've heard. So we're saying that overall Canadian phone usage, that has gone down 42% in the United States. So logically speaking, there must be 42% less Canadians doing phone activity here in the. So that's like a very. That's probably a good way to do it. Like that's the kind of data that's like very concise. You know, they probably collect all that information digitally. Like it's hard to argue. If the Canadian phone usage goes down 42%, roughly there's got to be 42% less Canadians. So is that basically what they're saying?
The new information reveals that border data doesn't capture the full extent of the drop, as well as the fact that when Canadians are traveling south of the border, they're visiting fewer locations and or staying for less time. Karen Chappell is standing by. Karen was one of the researchers involved here. She's with the University of Toronto School of Cities, also a geography and planning professor. Thanks for taking the time. Much appreciated, Karen.
Karen, I got mixed feelings about you, because on one hand, like it's good to have the proper data. Like you don't want to live with your head under a rock, not knowing the truth. But this is not the data I wanted to hear about, to be honest.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so the takeaway here, 42%, much steeper than what we have been reporting here. Talk to us a little bit about the research, how you were able to determine this, sort of in layman's terms, if you can.
Yeah, it's a measure of Canadian activity in the U.S. So far, all we had seen from CBSA data was border crossings. But what we can do is look at what happens when Canadians go over the border and how many cities are they visiting? Are they maybe visiting fewer cities before, which is what we found.
Oh, so they're using like every Canadian cell phone as like a tracking device, which is like, weird in a way to know that. I don't think they're looking at individuals. They're more looking at like the gross aggregate of all Canadians, like as a whole. But it's still like weird to think about that they know where all Canadians are traveling based on the location information in your cell phone. And with that, they can literally, it's like a little data point of every Canadian, where you're going, like exactly where you're going in the US and for exactly how long and exactly how many, instead of the border, which is like, okay, this car went through with this number of people and then we have no idea what they did or where they went or how long. So this is just much more data using the phones. So that makes sense.
And are Canadians that were in the U.S., maybe for work, maybe for school, are they coming home? And that we've lost some Canadian cell phone pings throughout U.S. metros, we think in part because the Canadians there have left. So it's not just about the ones in Canada making fewer trips. It's about folks coming home, too.
Yeah.
Whoa. This is actually really fascinating that they can do this. This is, again, it's, again, conflicting, because it's like the worst news for Americans, like, but it's fascinating at the same time how they're like doing this from a science point of view.
And how cell phone activity gives us a clearer picture of travel trends because we can sort of monitor it. Were you surprised, Karen, about the sharp decline?
We were surprised, yes, and then we started looking at where the drops were. And
where in the United States are the biggest drops in tourism? Oh, I do want to know that. But yeah, like it must have been pretty like shocking, because they've been going with this like 25%, 35% number. And then this data comes along and it's like, no, it really looks like 42, which again, like, that is mind-boggling. Like, again, Canadians, respect. Like, holy crap. Like, that, like, almost a majority, that's almost over 50%. Like, we're getting there. Feel that passionately against the United States and traveling. It really just shows like how much we have screwed up and pissed everyone off.
And then it started to correlate with other things, economic factors. So, for instance, there's a big drop in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Who would have thought? We were very focused on the
Okay.
snowbirds not going to Florida and the tourists not going to Las Vegas. But it
Sure.
turns out that perhaps the tariffs and trade dips have had an impact as well, so that folks from the auto industry in Ontario are not going across to Michigan as much as they were.
Yes.
I mean, this, to her point there, talking about how the tariff nonsense has literally like hurt the US so badly. And now like tariffs, my god, inflation is going up. It's a disaster. And some of this data could actually be useful to the United States for us to like be introspective and like identify what we've done wrong, even just from like policy and trade standpoints, even though it's kind of obvious. But my god, every American should be like way more upset about not with Canadians, but what we have done and our government and Trump have done to cause this.
So let's talk about that. You mentioned cross border, the kind of trips that you think Canadians are cutting back on the most, Karen.
Yeah, I think these are mostly economic related. So the trade
Okay.
ones are some of the ones we found, but I think what was most interesting was that the high tech and financial centers have also seen a drop. So New York, San Francisco, Dallas,
Oh,
Houston, and these are places.
wow. I actually would have thought those would have some like robustness, like Canadians who have to travel to New York or LA or big American cities, like it's probably out of necessity, and those are it's probably going to keep going. But no. So that's fascinating that even those like have dropped dramatically.
Where, for instance, BMO, CIBC, they have TD, they have offices there. People were working part of the time in Canada, part of the time in US, and maybe they've cut back on those US trips. Another
Wow.
factor is conferences. People are cutting back on conference travel for work.
Do you think this
That's amazing how much detail, amazing detail about exactly what Canadian like the Canadians who are traveling here, like what they're doing the travel for, and then in each of those groups, how much those have declined in certain areas or for certain reasons. Really fascinating, actually.
this signals kind of a long-term shift potentially, Karen, in Canadian travel habits to the States?
Yeah.
Well, we have to see. I mean, it's a draw, and the ties are deep, and families are split between the two countries, right? So, but
Sure.
if we can shift a good portion of our economy back to Canada and do trade with China and Europe instead of the U.S., then absolutely, this is going to be a sea change.
Karen, I appreciate you taking the time for
Wow.
us. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Karen Chappell with the University of Toronto.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Karen. Man. No, I mean, nothing like that's actually really great to know and really cool research that Canada is doing and just a whole different perspective on this situation cuz yeah, I mean, I just thought like that just tells you that this is probably here to stay, this trend. Like, it's been like over a year now. There's literally long term research being done on this boycott and the ramifications and the like there's literally research like that's how you know it's significant and probably going to last a long time, kind of like what she was saying. So overall, pretty disturbing, depressing news for the United States. But like I said, I think it's better to be educated about this stuff, and more Americans should like learn about this because it's shocking. 42%. It's shocking, and you don't hear Americans talking about this in the U.S. Like that's disturbing on a whole different level. Like we have no idea what's happening in the world and no idea the disaster we have done to our own country and the decline happening and the damage, and let alone how to fix it or look at ourselves and critique it and come up with a solution, or I don't know. Yeah, the more I think about it, it's quite scary for the US, but yeah, this was on the other hand quite fascinating and detailed and a very scientific approach to measuring this whole thing. So, for that reason I enjoyed it. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on this new updated data on Canadian travel boycotts to the US. And your thoughts on that, especially if you're Canadian, maybe this makes sense to you that 25% was too small of a number, maybe 42%. Maybe that makes more sense. It's a lot of Canadians, my God. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canadian things that I haven't seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.